So I'm going to start, let me back up a little bit. In that network I showed you, I said that Insite was the original project in 2003. What I want to focus on in that project is Insite is an important part of a network of projects run by the Portland Hotel Society, which is a community nonprofit that originally began offering housing. Once we got to know everybody in our building, it became very clear that one of the things that they really, really needed and weren't accessing was clinical help. So we looked at ways of trying to get nurses in. Originally, we were using street nurses, and I would ask a nurse to come to Joan's room to look at the wound on his leg. Well, that nurse would have to come into a very dirty room with a lot of bugs, like bed bugs, used rigs all over the place. I mean, hard to get people to come in and work in that environment, plus not really very fair to them. They could take home bed bugs to their family. Also, not very desirable to start working on people's wounds in such a dirty setting. Nowadays, 10 years later, we've got a clinical room, just a room that we've taken a bed out of. We no longer house someone in that. And I've got a basic diagnostic equipment like a blood pressure cuff, an examination bed, a computer, but it's nice and clean. And now all I have to do to entice nurses and doctors to come and make visits, because I can't get these folks to go to the clinics, so I get the clinicians to come to them. I now have a clean environment for them to work in most of our buildings. They've got a computer where they can access records and that kind of thing. And people only have to walk from their room to this room within their building. That's a model, that's a design of having a residential space where people live and call home, and embedding clinical services in that. And that's a theme I'm going to go over again and again and again, including this detox center, which is why I put the term residential in there. So people come to live at this detox center. Now, we all have the understanding when I bring people in that they're only coming to live for a short time, but still the culture, the feeling I'm trying to create at the detox is one of, come in, you will have your own room, you will have a shower, you will have privacy, you will have dignity, and then I'm going to bring to you the ability to access nursing, doctors, methadone, all the drugs that we give people to make them more comfortable in their stay. But again, I'm trying to build a sense of comfort in your surroundings, to entice you. My goal is to try and get people to come to these services. So I have to make the services as attractive as possible. So here we see a 3-story building. On the bottom floor of that building is Insite, the supervised injection site, with that very busy throughput that I talked about. It's open 18 hours a day. It opens at 10 o'clock in the morning and closes about 4 o'clock in the morning. Above that, on the second floor, is on-site detox, which I just described. And above that, on the third floor, is what we call a transitional recovery program. It's very important, that term transitional, because I'm dealing mostly with folks who are homeless or coming from very unstable housing, living in rooms that you and I would not live in. We wouldn't be willing to live there. So typically, at least in North America, I have not seen any detox centers here, and I wouldn't pretend to know what they're like. But typically in North America, when someone goes to detox, they have to share a room. We only segregate around gender, so men over here, women over here. I have to share a room with somebody. If I'm a cocaine addict and my friend or my roommate is a heroin addict, we have completely opposite needs in detox. One of us can't sleep, the other one can't stay awake. One of us is needs to go to the toilet all the time. The other person can't, to the point where I'm uncomfortable. I'm so constipated, and I'm going to see the nurse and the doctor around that. Well, we start to drive each other crazy. And most people leave a detox center in the first 24, 48 hours because of that reason. And we knew that when we were designing on-site on the second floor, and that's why we give everybody their own room and a washroom. Equally as important, we also knew that when those people are discharged from detox, which is a 5, 6, 7 day stay, that they're going to have to wait to get a bed in a recovery program. The chances that you will finish detox and have a bed available to you to transition to in a recovery program that's 10, 20, 40, 50, 60, 100 kilometers away is almost zero. You will have to wait 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks to get into that bed. If I send you back to the street, if I send you back to your unstable housing, you will not be able to maintain your sobriety. And you need sobriety to be able to get accepted into the treatment program. So I need to, that's a big step, and I need to shrink that step. So the third floor, at on-site, if you finish detox and you want to go on to treatment, then I can give you a room to live in on the third floor. You'll still go to the programs that you've been going to in detox. You'll still have access to nurses and the food and all that kind of thing, but you can stay there until your bed becomes available. Again, my goal is to make the steps much smaller so that people can more easily access these programs. These are just some images of the program itself. If I was interviewing you all to be employees, some of you as clinicians will bring a lot of very useful clinical skills. Others of you from the community might bring skills around crisis intervention and things like that. Those are all very valuable, but what I'm looking for in an interview is your philosophy, how you look at things. Because I can train you as a clinician around blood draws and PICC line maintenance and things like that. I can train you on crisis intervention and that kind of thing. I have that in my budget, but I can't train your attitude. I can't train you around how you're going to treat the people that are coming to these programs. That's what I'm looking for mostly. And it's very important at these programs that people feel at home and have the same expectations as you or I do when we go to the hospital, when we go to a hotel, when we go to a restaurant. The expectations on the clients should be the same, and that's what I'm looking for in my staff team. This is the common area where right now it's empty, so that maybe soon there will be yoga mats, or maybe soon there will be acupuncture. At dinner time and lunchtime and breakfast, the tables come out. Everybody shares this space many, many times a day for the programs. A typical day program might start with breakfast, acupuncture at 11 o'clock, lunch. Talking circle is a native North American custom. We have a significant number of natives in all cities in Canada. Native Canadians make up about 3% of the Canadian population, but they make up anywhere from 10 to 20% of the urban population in low-income areas. So we try to address that cultural need. Yoga, things like that that go on during the day. We have 12-step groups. I always like to, I think 12 steps is an amazing program, but as we all know, it really only speaks to about 20% of our participants. That's 2 out of 10 people. 100 years we've been dealing with this. 100 years later, 12-step is basically still the leading edge of therapy in a detox recovery program. There are all kinds of variations on that theme, but it's basically 100 years later still there. I'm really optimistic about the 21st century. I think that we're going to learn a lot this century. The last one was a bit of a wash, but I think the 21st century will be very productive. One of the areas that I'm really excited about is trauma therapy. I see a lot of mental health needs. Mental health is always, always, always a big component in looking at addiction. When most people talk about mental health, they often think of schizophrenia, bipolar, what we call the Axis 1 symptoms. really I see much, much more of the access to. Does everybody know what I mean, access to, or is that a North American term? Yeah. So I'm talking about post-traumatic stress disorder on a very large level. Only that's not a very good label. Post-traumatic stress disorder refers to, I've been to war, I've seen some terrible, terrible things, I've come back to my country as a civilian, so those terrible things have stopped. Post, it's happened. Now I have to piece my life back together. Or I'm in Aceh during the tsunami, I'm standing next to a tree, I grab it, but I watch my wife and children get washed out to sea. Post, it's happened, now I'm going to try and piece my life back together. In mental health professions, it took us 75 years to come up with that diagnosis. We still don't have a diagnosis on the books for chronic stress disorder, but that's what I'm talking about, where the trauma is ongoing. Think of a woman who is a street worker in prostitution, probably a drug addict street worker, probably the absolute lowest level in society, treated terribly. In any developed country, whether it be America, Canada, or anywhere in Europe, it should be an absolute embarrassment that we have people that go through what street prostitutes have to go through. I mean, if I was a street prostitute, male or female, I would want to be a drug addict. I would need that medicine to cope with what I was going through on a regular basis. Chronic stress disorder. So at Insite and Onsite and CTCT and even the housing programs that I'm talking about, we're trying to develop trauma therapy groups in all of those settings.